Hello and welcome to the Election Corner on One Man Think Tank. Today we're doing another little thought experiment, presidential election prediction, where Bernie Sanders wins the 2020 Democratic nomination instead of Joe Biden. This actually had a solid chance of happening. Bernie Sanders came in second and had what has been termed centrist Voltron not formed on Super Tuesday. There's a solid chance they would have split the centrist vote and Bernie Sanders would have walked into the convention with barely enough to take the nomination. So, this is a completely reasonable scenario to occur. As such, we're going to assume that is the only difference. Sanders becomes the nominee. He hasn't announced. We'll even assume, let's assume he has Kamala Harris as his VP, and he's going into the presidential election. Now, so everything else, coronavirus, all that happens. Now, starting off, Bernie Sanders gets the same advantage Joe Biden did of he is basically guaranteed to win every state Donald Trump lost in 2020. This is because the incumbent never or very rarely will win seats they lost. So Sanders starts off with a solid baseline of 232 electoral votes. Trump, on the other hand, is going to have plenty of safe seats. He's going to have the Great Plains as safe seats, most of the Old West heartland territories, and a solid chunk of the Deep South. In fact, it's basically looking like our base map for when we handle our Joe Biden predictions. So, we'll go state by state on who gets the votes, starting with Arizona, because might as well be alphabetical about it. And this one's going to go to Bernie Sanders, and I would actually argue it's going to go stronger for Sanders than it does for Biden. If there's one thing Sanders was able to do, it was turn out the Latino vote. He did a very good job of turning out the Latino vote, which could be key in a presidential election. And in this year of Senate races, also could be really potent because 4 of the 30-some-odd Senate races are in the Southwest, and 3 of the contentious ones. But we're not doing a Senate prediction. So, Sanders does amazing there. He also is going to do decently in North Carolina, however, it's still going to be leans Republican. North Carolina, I need to really learn how to read. Nebraska's 2nd district, which consists of Omaha and Lincoln. This area right now is leans Biden in my prediction, and it would be leans Sanders in my prediction. This is for a simple reason. Because there is a solid Democratic base pushing that moves this normally likely red district into the leans blue district. Solid House nominee, solid presidential candidate. That's enough to make the area more competitive than normal, but not competitive enough that you're going to be saying, the Democrats probably have this one. Obama does not return. Now for the first big change. Iowa is going to be a likely Republican state. Now, for those of you who watch my most recent presidential election prediction, Iowa's actually likely red for Biden right now, but let's just say this is a more solid red than it would be for Biden. Biden's had it lucky in the leans territory, but Sanders is not so lucky and it's going to have been likely Republican the entire time. This is just due to the fact that while he did very well in the Democratic primary in the state, or the caucus, he does not really seem to have the same voting base that could turn out Iowa, because he scares a group that the Democrats are trying to win over, which is suburban white voters. That's just the electorate the Republicans and the Democrats are fighting over in this election for how decisive it is in final results, whether it's for Biden or Trump. And the simple fact of the matter is, when you have someone pumping socialism and Sanders goes, yep, I'm a socialist, you lose suburban white house-owning, which is what most suburbanites are, whites. That's who you lose, and Iowa, that's the swing demographic there. So, likely Republican. Same story with Ohio. Bernie is not Sherrod Brown. Sherrod Brown is, I would argue, while he is progressive, he is one of the more conservative progressives. A good analogy is actually Joe Biden, a guy who's got that classic blue-collar background which is code for, you know what, pretty socially conservative but economically liberal. Sanders being both economically liberal and economically liberal and socially liberal will not help him in this race. And for right now, if anyone's complaining, we're using the American dichotomy of conservative and liberal. Don't at me, or whatever the phrase is now. But let's give Sanders some good news. Two states he does do well in are Michigan and Wisconsin, both in the likely category, because of course I don't do safe for flips from an incumbent. But I will say they are a darker shade of blue than Biden, and that's saying something. Biden's hovering at about 52% in Wisconsin and about 48% in Michigan. Sanders would be doing a little bit better in both states, maybe about 54% in Wisconsin and mid and 50-ish, almost exactly on the line in Michigan. This is just due to Sanders having that very progressive urban demographic that he's been looking for. The guys who are in Milwaukee will turn out more highly for him, as will more rural classical Union guys in the Rust Belt. Also, he has the inherent advantage of not being Hillary Clinton, which seems to have been Hillary Clinton's main weakness in 2016. Speaking of weaknesses, Pennsylvania for Sanders. Right now, Biden is likely in Pennsylvania. I actually have to move it down to a leans for him in this case, even with coronavirus. I think Sanders will be polling at a solid 48%, but Trump would be right under him at 47%. And that's because you've got basically the toxic mix for Democrats here, where you have a lot of suburban whites and a lot of rural whites. Those are two groups which don't vote for the Democratic Party regularly and are scared of the word socialism. But Sanders is leading in the two urban areas, and he would be winning more suburbanites than normal because of Trump, so I'd put Pennsylvania in a leans category. Another lean state for Sanders would be Maine's 2nd District, where he's just got the local cred. He's from Vermont. Maine's 2nd District is pretty conservative, but you also root for the home team over your opponent, and Maine's 2nd District has a history of going blue. Now let's do the South, where, good news if you're a Republican, North Carolina would be tilt red right now, and that's for one simple reason: suburban whites. That's the refrain here. And I think the Senate and governor races would be far and away as blue as they are now, but Biden's suffering in North Carolina for the presidential race, and I think Sanders would suffer for the same reason. He would draw out more of the core Democratic vote, but they do need a little bit of that and for the record, all you need is the core Democratic vote to win, which basically gets you Wisconsin, Michigan, and either Arizona or Pennsylvania at that point, and you win. Sheer fact of the matter, winning the South is a bonus, so anything from here on is him trying to claw the extra votes out, and North Carolina, I think, would be tilt Republican just because, like I said, that same coalition that weakens him in Pennsylvania also weakens him in North Carolina. However, Sanders is doing better in Georgia while not beating Trump. So just so you know how these change from my Biden predictions. In a Biden prediction, this is a tilt Democratic state in North Carolina, but Georgia is leans Republican. And Sanders so far has had a very good, like I said, he's really good at the minority turnout, which I think would make Georgia more competitive. Not to mention, the Georgian cities are very progressive. Suburbs, no way, Jose. But the cities are. And if you can get a lot of city turnout with a lot of minority turnout in Georgia, that makes the state more competitive. Biden isn't as good as getting the city turnout, but gets the minority turnout and the core base turnout, but he hasn't, and this is a key point on why this is tilt red for Sanders, but leans red for Biden. Biden hasn't been able to flip the suburban whites yet. The undecideds, the former Trump voters, are not going over to Biden. They're just sitting there twiddling their thumbs. Another state, Florida, this one's leans. It's leans Democratic. Now, right now it leans Democratic for Biden as well, but for Biden it's a darker shade of blue, Well, for Sanders, it's a lighter shade of blue. And this comes down to Sanders polls badly with Cubans. Biden doesn't. Cubans will vote for the Democratic Party over the Republican Party right now. But Sanders polls bad with Cubans. Sanders polls bad in the more rural areas, while Biden wins more of like the Pensacola area. Biden does better in suburbs than Sanders does, so Florida is a lighter shade of blue. However, Bernie does get one big advantage over Biden. It's a Texas size advantage. For Biden, Texas is tilt Republican. For Sanders, it's tilt Democratic for one reason. Remember that Latino turnout I talked about before that I kind of brought up in talking about Florida? Sanders built a whole network of turnout for that, specifically for him. He didn't intend it to just be for him, but that's what happens when you, in a primary, build turnout for yourself. They won't always go out for the winner of the primary if it's not you. With that, Sanders could flip Texas just by turning out more unknown voters. And also having the same general appeal in Texas as Biden does. Sanders did really well with suburban white voters, but in Texas, the swing vote isn't necessarily the suburban whites in the same way it is for Iowa or Ohio or even North Carolina. It is the Latino vote. If you can turn out the silent Latino vote, you win Texas with the classic Democratic coalition in the state. You don't need to start talking about, well, who's going down to Claiborne, Texas to turn out the Dallas suburbs? You just get to go, okay, everyone go vote for T.O. Bernie. I've been working for over a year to build these networks. And that would turn into a victory in Texas. So Sanders, at the end of the day, actually ends up with a slightly higher number of electoral votes than I'm currently predicting for Biden. Sanders gets 357, while Biden has 333. But if you notice, Sanders' coalition is a lot more fragile, a lot more leans states in all of this, one tilt, and he's not doing it as well as winning over all of the South. And in my personal opinion, Texas flipping is an inevitability in the future, but if you can flip the South, especially if you can get the entire chain down this way, can't get South Carolina this election, but that guarantees it for the Democrats in the future, because when you add Georgia and North Carolina together, you're only 7 votes below Texas, and actually 2 over Florida. But with that all being said, if you like the video, please leave a like and a comment down below. I always like hearing your guys' opinions. If you want to see more from the channel, click the subscribe button and the notification bell. If you want to hear more from me outside of YouTube, I have a Twitter, at OneManThinkTan1, the numeral, on twitter.com. Link down in the description. But have a wonderful day.